everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is my January wrap up. It's a tiny bit late because I have been focusing on reading. I'm currently trying to read 28 books in 28 days for February, and so I've been too focused on that to record any videos. It's going well though, so there's that. But today I'm here to talk to you about the 18 books that I read in January. So as you can see, I had a really good reading month in January. My average rating was 3.5, so not too shabby. I reread 4 books and I listened to 5 hours in audio, and I bought or acquired 6 books, so again, not too bad. My current TBR numbers, in case you're wondering, are here. I can't remember off the top of my head what they are. So I'm going to talk to you about the books that I've read now, and I'm going to try not to ramble too much because this is going to be a very long video if I do. Some of them I don't really have much to say about, so that's absolutely fine. So starting off, the first book of the year that I read was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is a book that you have probably heard of. It's won a lot of awards since it came out. It's a YA book about a boy whose brother gets shot, and the main character is travelling down in a lift or an elevator, and he's determined to get revenge, and he thinks he knows who has shot his brother, so he's going to go after them. And then various people meet him in the lift and he talks to them, and they talk through his thoughts and feelings and stuff. It was a good book, but nothing mind-blowing, I didn't think. I don't really like books written in verse, and this one is. I only picked it up because it was £1 in the charity shop and I wanted to see what everyone was hyped up about. I would recommend it. Go and pick it up anyway if you're on the fence, because like I said, I don't really like books written in verse. I really struggle to get an emotional attachment to them, to the characters and to the story, so don't take my word for it. Do go and check this one out in case you do enjoy it. I then picked up The Love and Lies of Ruxana Ali, which is a book about a lesbian Bangladeshi American character. She was born in the US and her parents were not. They were born in Bangladesh, and they find out that she has a girlfriend and has no interest in finding a man to marry, and so they send her, or they take her to Bangladesh with them to see her family, like her cousins, grandma and stuff. They basically think it's a phase and that they can talk her out of it. This was actually a very emotional book and it got really dark. I wasn't expecting how dark this was going to get. It's a YA book, so I was expecting it to be kind of like a light contemporary romance book about a Bangladeshi character discovering themselves and stuff, but no, it was dark. Like, she got basically abducted by her family and taken over there. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It would probably be a 4 apart from the ending. I didn't love it. I didn't love the ending at all, so that's what really dragged it down for me. But not too much, because 3.5 stars is still a really good rating. I would recommend this one if you like YA contemporary fiction, and reading this meant that I got to add Bangladesh to my country map. I then listened to Bridge of Souls on audiobook. This is the 3rd book in the Cassidy Blake series. It's a middle grade series about ghosts. The main character can talk to ghosts and build a connection with them, and also send them back to wherever they should actually be. And she has a best friend who is also a ghost. This one is set in Louisiana, in New Orleans, however you want to say it. And that's about all I could tell you about the plot, because this plot felt very rushed. It didn't feel as cozy as the other two, and it might be because, well, actually no, I was going to say it might be because I've not been to New Orleans, but I have been to Louisiana, and I've been to Edinburgh where the first book is set, but I haven't been to Paris where the second book is set, and I still enjoyed that. It just didn't have the same heart for me, so I only gave this one 3 stars. It's still not a bad book, but this is a series that I managed to finish already in January. I'm very pleased with myself. I also picked up I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. This is a YA historical book set in Romania. It follows a guy called Christian who is living under a dictator. I think it's in 1989 or 88, one of the two. It's more modern than I was expecting, basically, because I thought this was going to be set during like World War II, but it's not. That's just when her other fiction, or most of her other fiction, is set. It was a very interesting look into how life was in Romania during that time. I know nothing about Romanian history until now, so it was very interesting insight to a topic that I knew nothing about, so I really enjoyed it. Gave this one 4 stars. It was emotional, it was dark and disturbing. The ending was very rushed, and it could have gone a lot deeper, I thought, and that's the only reason I didn't give this 5, was because of the ending. I feel like it could have been a lot stronger, and this book could have been a little bit longer to kind of encapsulate what I felt like it was missing. I then read a load of Saga volumes. So I read Saga volume 3, volume 4 and volume 5. All of these were rereads, and I think I gave them all 4 stars this time. Did I? Yes, I did. This is when the series starts to get even darker. I obviously can't go into spoilers because this is the 4th book in the series, but it gets even darker than the first one. So if you're on the fence about enjoying the first lot of books because of how kind of dark and miserable everything is, it does get worse, and there's more violence, more gore, more drugs and sex and stuff. So yeah, probably I wouldn't carry on, but I do really enjoy this series and I can't wait to continue on with it. I have read all of the volumes so far up until number 10, which I do still need to get to, but that's the purpose of my reread. I then read The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels, which I gave 4 stars. This is a fiction book. It's kind of like a mystery rather than a thriller, and it's about a true crime writer who writes novels about true crime cases, and she's looking into a new case which happened a few years ago, and it was basically about a cult in London who all committed group suicide, and there was a baby involved somehow. The baby didn't die, it got taken away, but no one knows who that baby is because understandably people wanted to protect the baby's identity to stop this exact thing from happening. But the true crime author is kind of commissioned to write this book, and she is told to go and find the baby, and that can be their sort of spin on the story in time for the anniversary. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It was a really, really good book. I enjoyed it. I've done a full review on it. If you want to go and watch that, I will leave it linked down below. I then read Spare by Prince Harry, Harry Windsor, Harry Mountbatten Windsor, whatever you want to call him. I was going to do a full review on this one and share my thoughts as like a lower class or previously lower class English person, because I have a lot of thoughts on the class divide and Harry and him saying he doesn't have any money and can't afford things. And yeah, I feel like I could offer a perspective, maybe not a unique one, but I could offer something. So let me know if you'd be interested in that. I did take a lot of notes as I was reading, but I only gave this one 3 stars. It was kind of interesting in some parts. The middle bit about his trip to, or his work in Afghanistan, was boring as hell, and I feel like it kind of lost its way. I didn't agree with half the stuff he was saying, or any of it really. Okay, there was some stuff, but you know, for the most part, like, he's not a relatable person. And so I rated it 3 stars because some parts were intriguing, and that's about it. I then read Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, and I'm sorry if you can hear beeping, it's because Quill is cooking downstairs. I gave this one, what did I give it? 3.5 stars. It wasn't as good as the first book. This follows Astrid, who is Delilah's stepsister, as she realises that she is queer and not just straight, and she is renovating an old hotel because she's like a designer. So she's helping the owners come up with like a modern design for it. I enjoyed it, it was cute. I don't really remember much about it apart from the romance, which I did really enjoy. So I don't really have much to say about it, but yeah, it was good, it was enjoyable. I then finished off another series, so that was series number 2 of the year, and that book was Warstorm, which I didn't like. I gave this one 2 stars. So it was a massive letdown after not reading it for years and years, and this is exactly what I was scared of when I didn't finish off the series. And this is why I don't often finish series, because the final book in the series is often crap. This is the 4th book in the Red Queen series. You've probably heard of it. It's kind of like a middling old school YA book. It was really popular back in like 2014 to 2016. I can't remember when the first book came out. This one published in 2018, so I imagine the first one was like 2014, 2015. Yeah, I didn't like this at all. I don't think it was well written. The characters just didn't get anywhere. It was way too long as well. This book is like, what, 800? No, 700 pages. It does not need to be that long. It's meant to be a fast-paced YA book about like final battles and stuff, but it was still introducing new things, and kind of like Mockingjay did in the Hunger Games, but not as well. So yeah, 2 stars for this one. Would not recommend, and I won't be recommending this series. I then read a really good thriller, which was A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. I actually received this one from NetGalley before, but I went ahead and got a copy from the library because I am struggling to read ebooks again. So this is about a woman whose father is a serial killer, and she is kind of moving on with her life, but she is also very affected by it, and so she does have a substance abuse problem. So know that going into it. And then she is working as a therapist, and then one of her patients turns up dead, and it seems as though the pattern has started again. I did think the plot reveal and the who did it was very obvious and predictable, but this book is so fast paced, and the main character, she has a lot of like heart to her, and I feel like the author did a really good job of getting me to care about her, which doesn't often happen in thrillers because they're meant to be fast paced and you don't have much time with the characters, so often I don't give a shit about the main characters in thrillers. But I really liked Chloe. I found that I was really caring about what happened to her. I really liked the kind of red herrings that were thrown about as well, even if I did find it quite predictable. It was still enjoyable to read them. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I'm really surprised by this one. I can't wait to read her second book, which is out now, I think. The library has it on order, and I do have it from NetGalley, so I might just try and fit it in this month instead. I then read See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is part of my project where I read all of her books and decide which one is best. I'm nowhere near finished with that project because she has written so many books, so I'm happy to talk about this one right now. This is, I would say, a new adult book because the main characters are in college, about a Jewish girl who's just gotten to college. and she finds that she is rooming with her ex-best friend who went to high school with her. So that's not good. What's also not good is that it's basically a Groundhog Day story, and she starts to experience the same date over and over again. And so she has to work on fixing the failed timeline, if it's like a sciencey thing or a magic thing, I'm not necessarily going to say. And she meets a guy, obviously, because it's a cute contemporary romance, and they hit it off, and he wants to help her too. There were some darker elements in this one, so it's not all like light and fluffy. Some parts did surprise me as well. I do think that it could have delved deeper into the main character's family life and also his. I was very intrigued by his family's storyline, and it didn't really go into much about that, but I would have liked more. But for a story that's like kind of following two characters as they are stuck in a Groundhog Day type event, then it was a really good one and I did enjoy it. I gave this one 4 stars. I then read Spice Road. I was part of the blog tour for it. This is a new YA fantasy book. It's the debut. I only gave this one 2.5 stars. It's based on Middle Eastern mythology and they're like jinn, and I didn't really enjoy it. It's a shame because it's one of my most anticipated books of the year, but I felt like the ending, the first 25% was just a massive info dump, which was not good, and then the main character over-explained absolutely everything, and she just would not stop. She'd be having a conversation with someone, then she'd just go into the entire history of it, and it's like, you would never talk like this to anybody unless you're a history lecturer. Can you not? So yeah, it wasn't paced very well. I didn't really care about any of the characters. The relationships between the siblings was quite nice, but because I was finding myself very bored by the rest of the world building and the plot and stuff, I just didn't really care. So I gave it 2.5 stars. Not the strongest debut, so that's a shame. I then reread Ashfall by Mike Mullin, which is a post-apocalyptic book. It's basically a YA story about a main character who is affected when the Yellowstone volcano, supervolcano, erupts and the US is covered in ash if it's not burning. At the beginning of the book, his family have travelled to see a relative in a different state, and he hasn't gone with them because he's like a cool teenager and he can stay at home by himself. Except then his home is struck by, I guess, like a burning rock, gets set on fire. He has to go and live with some neighbours for a bit, and then he decides to go and find his family and trek across the country. I did find there was a romance in this that I didn't love, and the author does have an author's note at the beginning, or like a acknowledgement section, where he's like, for my wife, my Darla, and Darla is the main character's love interest in this book. And I was a bit like, are these self-inserts of you and your wife? Because that's a bit weird. But yeah, it was a good book. It was enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars at the time, and I'm giving it 4 stars now because I figure even though now it might be more of a 3.5 star, back when I read it, I was in more of the sort of age category that it was aimed towards. So I've stuck with 4 stars because why not? I'm looking forward to finishing off that series in the coming months. The next book I read was I Am Still Alive by Kate Alice Marshall. This is for my Kate Alice Marshall project because I'm trying to read all of her books and decide which one is best. This one was 4.5 stars. It was so good. This is actually her debut, and it's about a girl whose mother dies in a car accident that also the girl is in. The girl is injured. I should probably figure out her name. Her name is Jess. She is actually injured in the same car accident that killed her mother, and so she is disabled, and I think she's like paralysed from the hip down or the upper thigh down, and she is sent to live with her father, who she hasn't seen since she was a toddler, who is a survivalist living in the woods in Canada, and he's involved in some shady stuff. And so right at the beginning, her father is murdered by some shady people who he was involved with, and she has to stay alive through winter by herself and perhaps get revenge. It's a survival thriller that I really enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was so thrilling. There are a lot of animal deaths in this. The main character is a vegetarian, and she kind of addresses how it makes her feel. So that was really interesting, and seeing her have to learn to survive just from like the snippets of what she has learnt from her father after not really knowing him for very long was very intriguing, and it was so interesting to see her fail and over again but keep trying. There's a dog in this as well. I wouldn't necessarily read this if you're an animal lover, unless you're prepared for very emotional things to happen. You just know when someone mentions there's a family pet in a survival story, like things may not go so well for the pet, and I was constantly on the edge of my seat worrying about this dog. I won't say whether or not she gets revenge or not, but the ending to the book was absolutely epic and really eventful and not action-packed even, but just very tense. It was really good and very atmospheric as well, so I would highly recommend this book. It was so good. I wasn't expecting to love it this much, but it was really good. The penultimate book that I read in January was Haven't They Grown, which is a domestic suspense book. I would say it's not really a thriller. It's about a main character who visits goes to the address of someone who used to be her best friend. They knew each other when they were younger and then grew up and had kids at around the same time. They were really close, and then something happened which meant that they drifted apart. Her best friend and her family moved away, but the main character, whose name is Beth, is driving her son to a football match near to where her best friend has moved to, and so she goes and sits outside her house in like a bit of a weird manner. It's not really stalking, but it's like you could just knock on the door. And then she notices that her friend's children haven't aged a day since she last saw them, and that was like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So they should be teenagers at this point, but they're quite clearly little kids. And they are called the same names that they were called back then. So she's kind of wondering what the hell is going on and has to try and figure it out because she's really nosy. She could just leave it, but she doesn't. And she sort of cares for her ex-best friend. But to be honest, if I hadn't spoken to someone in 12 years and they were acting a bit weird, then I would probably just drive on and wouldn't get involved. I gave this one 3 stars because it was entertaining, but it's more of like an aeroplane read or like a popcorn read where you read it and then you forget that you have done so. I've already forgotten most of the plot points of this apart from the ending because it's so over the top. It just wasn't anything amazing, and if you find it in a charity shop, by all means read it, but I wouldn't recommend paying full price for this book because it's like you are going to forget about it eventually. And then finally, the last book that I read in January was The Quiet at the End of the World by Lauren James, which is a dystopian book about 2 people who are the youngest on Earth. Every other human is aging and they're actually infertile because of a virus. So these 2 are kind of like humanity's last hope, and the elderly adults are raising them to make the Earth better, potentially, or just to survive. I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't anything amazing. There was a plot twist in there that I didn't really care for. I didn't like the romance between these 2 because it just felt so cliche because they were the last 2 on Earth. Like, who else were they going to fall for? They didn't really have any choice. It was interesting. It had some like interesting concepts and ideas, and you can probably have some interesting discussions about it if you care about it, but I didn't necessarily, so I only gave it 3 stars. I was hoping for something more, to be honest. And that's it. Those are the 18 books that I read in January. I'm really pleased with myself. I had a really good reading month. February is also fantastic. My average rating for February so far is actually higher than my one for January, so that's exciting. Let me know if you want me to do a full review on any of these books. I've already done one for a couple of them, just one I think, but obviously I'm always willing to do more. I am a book reviewer. If you have read any of these, sorry, I'm just trying to lift them up. If you have read any of these, let me know in the comments below and tell me your thoughts. Tell me if you've read the whole Red Queen series and if you were as disappointed as I am, and I will speak to you all in the next video. Bye!